Global updates.
Welcome to the Global Updates, bringing you the latest news from around the world. The United States and Canada share the longest undefended border in the world, stretching over 5,500 miles. This might give the impression of a simple and harmonious relationship, characterized by mutual respect and cooperation. However, the history between these two North American giants is more complicated than it appears on the surface. It is marked by periods of both cooperation and competition, reflecting the dynamic nature of their interactions. From early territorial disputes to modern trade disagreements, the relationship has seen its share of challenges and triumphs. Despite these challenges, the two countries have built strong economic and security ties over the decades, fostering a deep interdependence. They are each other's largest trading partners, with billions of dollars in goods and services exchanged annually. They collaborate closely on defense and intelligence, ensuring the safety and security of both nations. However, the current dispute over access to Alaska highlights the inherent tensions that can arise. These tensions exist between a global superpower and its northern neighbor, each with its own national interests. Understanding this complex history is essential to grasping the gravity of the current situation and the stakes involved. The Alaska Purchase in 1867 from Russia added a new layer of complexity to the relationship. It landlocked the U.S. state and made it reliant on Canadian trade routes for essential supplies and access. This dependence has been a point of contention ever since, influencing diplomatic and economic negotiations between the two countries. The latest flashpoint in U.S.-Canada relations centers on Alaska. The Canadian province of British Columbia has imposed tolls on American commercial vehicles. These vehicles are traveling to and from Alaska through British Columbia. This decision has infuriated the U.S. government and businesses. The U.S. argues that these tolls violate long-standing agreements regarding transit rights. The U.S. claims that these tolls add an unfair burden on American businesses. These businesses rely on Canadian routes for the transportation of goods to and from Alaska. Canada, however, maintains that the tolls are necessary. Canada says these tolls help maintain its infrastructure. Canada also wants compensation for the environmental impact of increased traffic. This dispute has escalated quickly. It threatens to spill over into other areas of the bilateral relationship. It has also raised concerns about the future of North American trade. Alaska's economy is uniquely vulnerable in this dispute. Its remote location and limited infrastructure make it heavily reliant on the transportation of goods through Canada. The new tolls imposed by British Columbia threaten to disrupt supply chains and increase costs for businesses. From essential commodities like food and fuel to construction materials and manufactured goods, Alaska depends on the smooth flow of trade through Canada. The increased costs due to tolls could lead to higher prices for consumers. It could also reduce the competitiveness of Alaskan businesses. The situation is particularly worrisome for industries like fishing and tourism, which are vital to Alaska's economy. These industries are already facing challenges. The added burden of transportation costs could have a devastating impact. The dispute over Alaska access is more than just an economic disagreement. It is a complex issue that intertwines economic interests with national pride and political strategy. It is also a political battleground where both sides are trying to assert their leverage, each aiming to gain the upper hand in this high-stakes game. For Canada, the tolls are a way to demonstrate its sovereignty and push back against what it perceives as American pressure on trade issues. The Canadian government sees this as an opportunity to assert its independence and protect its national interests. The Canadian government is under pressure from its own citizens, who are increasingly vocal about their concerns and demands. Canadians want to see tangible benefits from their country's strategic location, and they expect their government to stand firm in negotiations. They argue that the U.S. has long taken Canadian cooperation for granted, and now is the time to recalibrate this relationship. For the United States, the dispute is about protecting its economic interests and maintaining its influence in North America. The U.S. views the tolls as a direct challenge to its economic dominance in the region. The U.S. sees the tolls as an affront to its sovereignty and an attempt to exploit its dependence on Canadian routes. This has sparked a heated debate within the country. The Biden administration is facing pressure from Congress and businesses to take a tough stance against Canada. Lawmakers and industry leaders are calling for decisive action. The administration wants to deter other countries from taking similar actions that could harm American interests, setting a precedent for future international relations. Economic fallout, the price of discord. The economic consequences of the Alaska access dispute are potentially significant for both the United States and Canada. This disagreement has the potential to ripple through various sectors, affecting not just the immediate stakeholders, but also the broader economic landscape. For the United States, the immediate impact is being felt by businesses and consumers in Alaska, who are facing higher costs and potential disruptions to supply chains. The scarcity of essential goods and the increased transportation costs are already causing concern among local businesses. However, the longer-term impact could be more widespread. The ripple effects might extend beyond Alaska, influencing economic activities in other states. It could affect businesses across the country that rely on trade with Alaska or use Canadian transportation routes. The interconnected nature of modern supply chains means that disruptions in one area can have far-reaching consequences. The dispute could also harm the overall business climate between the two countries. Tensions in trade negotiations might lead to a more cautious approach in future dealings. It might discourage future investment and cooperation. Businesses may become wary of potential risks, leading to a slowdown in cross-border ventures. For Canada, the economic fallout is less certain, but potentially just as damaging. The uncertainty surrounding the dispute could create an unstable business environment. While the tolls may generate some revenue in the short term, they could harm the country's reputation as a reliable trading partner. This reputational damage could have long-lasting effects. This could lead to a decrease in trade and investment. Investors and trading partners might seek more stable alternatives. It might hurt industries that rely on cross-border commerce. The interconnected economies of the US and Canada mean that any disruption can have significant consequences for both nations. A continent divided, the future of North American trade. The Alaska access dispute has raised concerns about the future of North American trade. It comes at a time when the rules-based trading order is already under strain from rising protectionism and geopolitical tensions. The dispute between the United States and Canada, two of the world's largest economies and closest trading partners, sets a worrying precedent. It could encourage other countries to adopt similar measures. This could further fragment global trade. It could lead to a decline in economic growth and prosperity. The dispute also highlights the limitations of existing trade agreements. It shows how they are ill-equipped to deal with modern challenges. This situation underscores the need for greater cooperation and dialogue to address trade disputes and maintain the integrity of the global trading system. Global ripples. A world watching closely. The trade spat between the United States and Canada over Alaska access is being closely watched by the international community. Many countries are concerned about the potential for the dispute to escalate and damage the global economy. The dispute comes at a time of heightened geopolitical uncertainty. Many nations are already grappling with the economic fallout from the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. A trade war between the United States and Canada would have significant implications for global supply chains, investment flows, and economic growth. It would also undermine the rules-based international order, which many countries rely on for stability and predictability in international relations. Seeking common ground. The path to resolution. Despite the current impasse, there is still hope for a negotiated settlement to the Alaska access dispute. Both the United States and Canada have a strong interest in maintaining their close economic and security ties. The costs of a prolonged trade war would be significant for both countries. The key to resolving the dispute lies in finding a solution that addresses the concerns of both sides. This will require compromise and a willingness to see the issue from each other's perspective. One potential solution could involve the United States providing Canada with financial assistance to help offset the costs of maintaining its infrastructure and mitigating the environmental impact of American traffic. In return, Canada could agree to reduce or eliminate the tolls on American commercial vehicles. The stakes are high, a time for diplomacy. The stakes in the Alaska access dispute are high. Failure to find a resolution could have serious consequences for both the United States and Canada. It is essential that both sides approach the negotiations in good faith. They should prioritize finding a mutually acceptable solution. The alternative, a protracted trade war, would be harmful to both economies. It would set a dangerous precedent for international relations. This is a time for diplomacy and statesmanship. The leaders of both countries must rise above the current rhetoric and work together to find common ground. The future of the United States and Canada depends on it. The economic impact on local communities. Beyond the high-stakes negotiations and political maneuvering, the Alaska access dispute has a profound impact on local communities. In the border towns of Alaska and Canada, families and small businesses are feeling the pinch. Fishermen who rely on cross-border waters for their livelihood face dwindling catches. Local shops and restaurants that once thrived on cross-border tourism are now struggling to keep their doors open. The ripple effect of this conflict is far-reaching. Truck drivers who transport goods between the two nations are experiencing delays and increased costs. Farmers on both sides of the border are seeing their produce stuck in limbo, spoiling before it can reach markets. The economic interdependence of these communities means that when one sector suffers, the pain is felt by many. Pause once. However, amidst the challenges, there are stories of resilience and hope. Community leaders are organizing cross-border meetings to find local solutions. Grassroots initiatives are emerging, aimed at fostering understanding and cooperation between affected towns. While the national leaders work towards a diplomatic resolution, these communities remind us of the human element at the heart of international relations. Pause once. The economic impact on local communities serves as a poignant reminder that the stakes of this dispute are not just measured in dollars and trade balances, but in the everyday lives of people. As the negotiations continue, it's crucial to remember the faces behind the numbers and the communities that depend on a swift and fair resolution. Potential environmental consequences. Beyond the immediate economic impact, the Alaska access dispute also raises significant environmental concerns. The delicate ecosystems that span the US-Canada border are some of the most pristine and biodiverse regions in North America. Any disruption in cross-border cooperation could lead to unintended environmental consequences. Pause once. One pressing issue is the potential for increased pollution. With border tensions high, regulatory oversight and environmental monitoring could become less coordinated, allowing harmful practices to go unchecked. This could result in increased pollution of shared waterways, affecting not only marine life, but also the communities that depend on these resources. Pause once. Furthermore, the dispute could hinder collaborative conservation efforts. For decades, the US and Canada have worked together to protect endangered species and manage shared natural resources. A breakdown in communication and cooperation could jeopardize these initiatives, putting vulnerable species and habitats at greater risk. Pause once. There is also the threat of increased resource exploitation. In an effort to assert control and leverage in the dispute, either nation might accelerate resource extraction activities such as logging, mining, or drilling without adequate environmental safeguards. This could lead to habitat destruction, loss of biodiversity, and long-term environmental damage. Pause once. However, amidst these challenges, there are also opportunities for positive environmental action. The dispute has brought renewed attention to the importance of cross-border environmental stewardship. Environmental groups and local activists are advocating for stronger protections and more sustainable practices, emphasizing that the health of our planet transcends political boundaries. Pause once. The potential environmental consequences of the Alaska access dispute serve as a stark reminder that our natural world is deeply interconnected. As the negotiations unfold, it is crucial to prioritize not only economic and political interests, but also the preservation of our shared environment for future generations.